Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna grab a glass of water here. Ah, amazing. All right,
All right, I think we're live. I wish I could
great.
just, oh no, wait a second though, because I feel like this is like the beginning of every live I do. You ask, why don't you want to do these? This is why. I, oh, I think we're, there's a little delay. A little delay.
Amazing. All right.
All right, I think we're live. Oh, let me mute my TV. So the funniest thing is, Chuck, as we were starting this, I was like, oh, the first thing our audience is going to hear is you going, ah, and they did. I'm
Yeah,
going to
it
figure
was
out,
a refreshing glass of water.
oh, yes. I'm going to figure out how to split screen us for our audience. And I'm going to do that while you're introducing yourself. I'm going to start with me.
All right.
Welcome to our live, everyone. Another small man made disaster in the works here. My name is Juliet. I run the Anker communities on Facebook. I'll be dropping links throughout the chat so you can learn more about the product we're talking about. This is the group to join. This is the F3800 Facebook group. Lots of sharing goes on in there, lots of product information. I have a direct line to the product team and the engineers, so I take questions to them as needed. And sometimes they answer me in a very timely manner, and that's awesome. So please feel free to join that group. Tonight, we are taking your questions. So tee us up, get us some questions in the chat on Facebook or on YouTube. I'll be looking at both of those streams. We're taking any of your questions about the F3800. If we can't answer them, I will answer them in the group. I have a notepad right here, and I'm taking notes. So, with that, Chuck, introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Chuck. You know me on the internet as Chuck Cassady, and I've been a brand ambassador with Anchor since 2022, I think. Right at the beginning of the launch of the Solix line. And in that time, I've worked extensively with Anker and have a ton of experience with all of their products. I've lived in vehicles that are powered by those. I've got some of them installed at my house here. I've gone on camping trips with them. And I've been also working with Anker and have met with people on the product development team, and I understand the inner workings of what goes on when they are engineering these devices, the push and pull, and the balances between performance and reliability and safety and price the engineers are working on. So hopefully we'll get some good questions from you all today, and I'll be able to answer them. And if not, I trust that between Juliet and I, we will be able to find those answers some point down the road. And I'm here in my basement with all of the Anchor stuff that I'm currently fooling around with. So if you have any questions about any stuff here, I can hold it up and maybe show you some things firsthand. So good to be here.
So, Chuck, I am having a little bit of trouble with our software here. And I apologize for that to our audience.
Oh
I'm going to
no.
be trying and figuring, I'm going to try and figure some things out. Um, I just hit a setting I don't understand and don't like. I guess I'm not sharing anything confidential. That's good of me. Yep. Okay. So what I'm going to try and do is figure out how to make this a split screen view for our audience. I see someone is
Okay.
asking, where are y'all on YouTube? We're live streaming on YouTube. I hope we're live streaming on Facebook. You can find us on our YouTube channel. Just search Anker Solix and make sure you look for channel. So Chuck, just to keep things rolling, um,
Yeah.
I am going to ask you some questions about the F3800, namely, how long have you had it and how many do you have? How do you use it? And
Yeah.
what do you like about it?
So I got my hands on the F3800 first. It's been a little over a year now at this point. And in fact, they've actually updated the design since then. There's two here. I've got believe it's the older unit here, and then I'm using this unit as my stool. I've used these honestly, I've used these a lot on the job site because they have the ability to run a 240-volt source. You can plug in things like welders to them. And I've used them to power things like they can really easily power stuff like table saws, planers, pretty much anything you can plug into a 20 amp circuit, it can run no problem. And you can get, up to 25 amps of 240-volt power out of this. So I've used it a bunch for that. I have used it for a short period of time to power a school bus conversion that I have. My background is in doing school bus conversions, and it did that easily. But lately, I have this one to my left connected to my home power panel. And I'm just waiting on another cable, and I'll plug this one into my home power panel because you can have up to two connected. And I use it in conjunction with my grid tied solar array. And I've programmed it to know that I'm on time of use metering, which is when your utility company charges more depending on if that is during a peak use period. So right now we are in a peak use period. So my house, this whole shebang, is being powered by this unit, which was recharged during the day by either cheap power from the grid or surplus power from my solar panels. And then for the next few hours while electricity is at its peak price, I'm going to run my home off of this power that was either free or from when electricity was cheaper overnight or earlier in the day. I've had this system installed in my house since late April, and it's been doing great. And this is with just one F3800. The second one I've not had the chance to hook up. And remember, you can also add expansion batteries to this to improve their performance. But I'm averaging, as far as savings, around $40 a month just with this one unit plugged in. Now, if you had two units or if you had additional battery in there, that number could obviously go up. And one thing I'm looking forward to doing is, so currently my solar system is grid tied. Because this can accept up to 2,400 watts of solar input, I'm looking forward to installing, I've got four of Anker's rigid solar panels that I'm going to be hooking up into here, which will give me another roughly 1,600 watts of solar input. And my hope is that that will give me the ability, so if the grid goes down and my grid tied panels shut off, because that is what happens when the grid goes down, I'll be able to run my house off of the 1,600 watts of solar that are connected to this device, in addition to cashing in on the electricity they make every day through the AC coupling of this system. So it's a really robust system. I'm very happy with it so far. $40 a month is, doesn't sound like much, but compared to something like a gas generator that you might use for home backup, which sits there doing nothing and in fact costing you money because it needs maintenance, it's pretty nice value proposition. What's really cool is if I go camping and I want to take this with me, I just unplug it and go, and my house operates just fine like normal as it used to before I had this system. So right now, I've got a fan running and lights and all of this, and my house is using about 267 watts of power,
Were you
and I think the fan just
surprised?
shut off. So,
Were you
what's surprised
surprised?
by what?
Yeah, were you surprised that with the $40 savings? I like what you say that with a gas generator,
Yeah,
you're going to have the fuel costs, you have maintenance costs, of oil changes and making sure it works. You have to probably test it more frequently. I don't know. So with
yeah.
$40, I mean, it's not nothing. Say more about that.
No, it's not nothing. And I mean, to be honest with you, my house is a small house. It's only 800 square feet. If you used more electricity or if your rates had a greater difference between the peak and off-peak pricing, that number could actually be significantly larger. Here in Denver, I believe it's 19 cents per kilowatt hour on peak right now, and like 9 or 11 cents off peak. I believe in California, that difference can be up to five times as much, like as high as 40 cents or 50 cents per kilowatt hour of
That's
electricity.
wild.
And so obviously that number, if I was in California, I could be saving, I could potentially be saving like double or triple what I'm currently saving just with this setup. So yeah, I mean, no doubt this is a system that costs several $1,000s, but it's also got a 10-year design life. So if I'm saving, even just $40 a month, times 12 months a year, that's, what is that, $480 a year times 10 years is $4,800. At that point, you're getting very close to offsetting the cost of this system just in the dollar savings. That's assuming you get no value out of it because it gives you automatic backup when the power goes down. Because if a generator is your backup source and the power goes down, you've got to go outside, start the generator up, and then manually switch over, right?
Yeah.
Well, with this and the home power panel, it's automatic and it's instant. I don't know when the power goes off at my house anymore. I have to look outside the window and see what's happening at my neighbors.
Right. I
So,
can anticipate that a question folks will have is, well, what is the cutover time? And just so everyone knows, it is 20 milliseconds at most,
yeah.
we say.
Hmm. Yeah, and so far, nothing in my home shuts off in that changeover time. So if I'm, if my Wi-Fi doesn't shut off, my printer, my laptop, my electric dryer, nothing shuts off. There's a little flicker, and that's it. And that's, I mean, it just makes my house, the energy system of my house right now is more than breaking even. Like I'm not spending any money on electricity, but because I've got the rooftop solar, and if the power goes out, I've got electricity happening. So to me, that's a pretty amazing setup to have. And what I love again is that, unlike a more permanent system like a Tesla Powerwall, which is really just meant to be installed and only used at home, if I want to take this with me, I just unplug it and go. That's all I have to do. I don't have to push a button. I don't have to do anything, and I can take this and use it wherever I want to.
Yeah,
And
very
so it's
useful.
really
Very,
amazing. Yeah,
very manageable in the sense that you can apply it to your life circumstances. I mean, we have to make the joke:
yeah,
zombie apocalypse comes, you can just bring your backup power system with you. So,
sure,
are
totally.
there things about the F3800 that you don't like? I mean, at some point, I don't think it's a
Yeah.
secret to anyone, we'll have a new model coming out. So we are sort of informally collecting feedback from users, and you certainly count among them. What's something that you would like to see changed?
Yeah, well, what is cool with the Anchor stuff is Anchor is really on it as far as listening to feedback and doing firmware updates that address that feedback
Thank you.
like pretty rapidly. They're
Yeah,
pretty responsive, I would say. So, but one of the complaints I have, and to be honest, I have not updated the firmware on this since April. So if this has been addressed, great. But the fans on this, when I'm using it, not in the home power panel mode, but when I'm using it standalone, if I have the inverter on, the fans are always running higher than I would like them to, and they're loud compared to something like the F2000 or the C1000, which is like basically silent. That was a beef that I had. I also, in all honesty, I think love to see maybe a different style of connector. We have these XT60 connectors, which are great, but
yeah.
they are a bit limiting if you are looking for a way to plug in solar panels. They're fine for the application, and what I do like about them is they're not proprietary. So if you want to make your own adapters to plug in a custom solar panel setup or something, you can go online and you can buy XT60 plugs and solder them or crimp them onto whatever wires you want to connect. But I would like something more like an Anderson connector that can handle more amperage. Outside of that, I don't, I personally don't feel like the F3800 is really like limited or has things about it that I don't like. It does a lot more than any other product like this on the market simply by virtue of what it does when it's combined with the home power panel and the current sensing transformers and its ability to AC couple. Which, if you don't know, what that means is that, when my home is up and running, right, this can sync its output with the output from the grid and just mix and match and blend together power for the optimum combination of price and reliability and efficiency. And that's something that a competitor's product like EcoFlow, they make products that offer the same types of backup features and things, but they don't have AC coupling down to where you can blend seamlessly the power like that. And to me, that's a huge selling point on this because I really do believe if you're going to spend this much money on a system, having it pay you back over time to justify your investment, to me, I think is a really powerful reason to buy that, because green technology, solar technology, it's expensive. It's come down tremendously in
Yep.
price, but it's still expensive. And what I like seeing is things that incentivize people and give people the ability to make back the money that they spend on that upfront investment. And Anchor has positioned themselves with these products to be, I think, right now, probably the leading company in terms of being able to take portable power stations and hook them to your home and recoup the money that you invest into them when you purchase them. So I really love that, honestly. And I think that that's a tremendous selling point. I like the portability of it. I mean, I wouldn't be a brand ambassador for Anchor if I didn't think their products were really good. So I mean, there's not a whole lot that I would change, frankly. I mean, I don't love, the cables that they use for the expansion batteries. I think sometimes those are awkward, and I would love to see different lengths available on those.
I hear that a
Because if you're going to be
lot.
installing these, yeah,
And
like if you're going to be
I
installing these in like an RV or something, it can be frustrating to not have more options for the placement of them.
I wouldn't be
And
surprised if
that's
we,
maybe the best I can come up with.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if very shortly, I mean, I don't have this insider information, but I wouldn't be surprised if we did affect those cables. It's something that, the product team and the engineering team, they've heard a lot from me on that, because
Yeah,
what is said in the group does not stay in the group.
yeah,
So, and by group I mean the group. Join the group. So that feedback has been passed on. I want to ask you about the voltage. So, with this system, you are limited to 2,400 watts of solar per F3800. And I should
yep,
know you can connect two F3800s and have 4,800 watts of solar. You'll need a cable between the two to tether them. And you can actually expand this system with expansion batteries to like 56,000 kWh. So it's a very manageable system, and you can really tailor it to what your need is. So whole house power is within reach, with I think some limitations in terms of how big your house is. Do you have a 4-ton AC? You know, just really depends on your
yeah,
individual household. But I hear this a lot. You're limited to no more than like 60 volts of solar input. Can you speak to that? Like, do you have any idea why that might be? Is that a
yeah.
function of it being an XT60? Is it safety? Fill us in.
Sure. From my understanding in the talks I've had with product designers and engineers at Anchor, that limitation was really based on trying to keep any voltages, any DC voltages that the consumer might come in contact with below what is considered the threshold for when electrical voltages can become really dangerous and potentially deadly. I know that 60 volts is widely considered to be that threshold. I don't know where the 60 and XT60 comes from. It might be because it's not designed for more than 60 volts, but it is understandable that that can be frustrating for people because it is common in the solar world. The output voltages of commercial, and residential style solar panels, those large format panels, is generally going to be somewhere between the low 40s and the high 50s. That's the voltage that you're going to get coming out of them,
Interesting.
which is fine until you start connecting them in series. And when you connect a solar panel in series, which is where you kind of daisy chain them together, where the positive of one connects to the negative of the next, which connects to the positive of the next, the voltage becomes additive. So if you have two 50-volt solar panels and you connect them in series, now you're at 100 volts of input, and that's more than this can accept. And so that does become frustrating for people if their solar arrays are wired that way. However, um, the there are plenty of workarounds to that. And the number one workaround is wire your panels in parallel, which is where you connect all of the negatives together in one group and all of the positives together. And in that situation, the voltage doesn't change. The voltage remains the same, and it's the current that goes up. So I'm assuming that the decision to keep it below 60 volts was because this device is really meant to be plug and play, consumer friendly, and something that is not dangerous to somebody who might not know better,
Right.
who inadvertently touches, you know, the ends of the solar panels, which, the solar panels, if they're in the sun, they're on. And so if you're holding the end of that and, your finger, gets into the socket and touches it, you're going to feel 60 volts at whatever amps the panels
Yeah.
are pushing, and that could be dangerous. And I think this was all probably done, I'm speculating here, but to keep that threshold below the safety threshold for threatening life and injury. That's my own speculation. But if you are trying to design a solar array that will play nice with this, it's really easy to do that. You just need to look at the gray sticker on the back of your solar panel and look at what is labeled as the V and then OC. That's the open circuit voltage of your solar panel. And it's important to note that as the temperature drops, the open circuit voltage of a solar panel will rise because solar panels actually become more efficient the colder it is. But you'll want to look at that, and there's ways to calculate, what's the lowest temperature you're going to see in your area. And if it's a sunny, cold winter day, you'll be able to determine based on the formula they give you on the back of that, how many volts that will change for every degree of temperature change. And you just have to make sure that you're going to stay below that 60-volt threshold. And if you're not, you need to probably look at a different solar panel, honestly. Now, there are workarounds. You can get very creative. You can use a charge controller in between the panels that you have and your Solix F3800. And what that would do is, say you connect your whole array to the charge controller, and you then set the output voltage of your charge controller, which takes all the power from your solar panels and reconfigures it to whatever voltage you want, and set that to be, say, 55 volts or whatever, and then feed it into here. That's a
So,
workaround that
you know,
it will totally work, but it's a little redundant.
you're not seeing the 60-volt max as problematic, really. I mean, is that
No,
a fair
it
summary?
just requires a worker. It requires a workaround. And every solar system, has a voltage input limit.
Yeah.
On big commercial things, that limit could be as high as 1,000 volts. But
And this
on
is
this,
not
we're
commercial.
seeing it is 60.
But
No, it's
speaking of
not, and
commercial,
that's because it's designed to be plug and play
right.
and something
But
approachable.
speaking of commercial, I want to start taking some questions from the live
All
since
right,
you and I could
cool.
talk about this stuff forever and a day, but we have promised people the AMA. So we're going to get into that.
Yeah,
And we're going to
yeah,
go over time. I'm sorry, Chuck, because I know
it's
you're
okay.
missing part of the family wedding for this, but we
No,
thank
it's
you.
all good.
So, Shaddy, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. She has a mobile pet grooming. She doesn't know if this is good for that application or not. I've seen your question in the group, Shaddy. So, thank you for joining our live. Here's the thing, we need to know what your equipment is, and you're going to add up the watts, and you're going to get a rough idea based on the watt hours of one of these F3800s, which is 3,840 watt hours, how long you'd be able to run your equipment. So we'd have to know quite a bit more about the not the job you do, but the appliances you use to run your business. So circle back to us in the group. We'll get into more of that with you. Walter, I don't know about the radiation. I'm going to assume that we are not all in danger here. And I honestly don't even really know how I would get a great answer to that question. I'm going to try though. Um, so Benjamin asks, he has experienced, I like this. Thanks, Benjamin. Benjamin has experienced 2 to 3 seconds for the cutover time intermittently. Sometimes it's 20, but not always. I know brands say this all the time. We overstate the 20 milliseconds just to set an expectation. But I hear that fairly often too. And in my experience with the F3800, I have to run my home office. It doesn't it doesn't ever take more than 2 or 3 seconds. Let's see. Hi, Travel Diva. So classic Nige. I'm looking into getting solar panels and getting the Anker X1 or the F3800. What's a ballpark price for solar panels? Well, Chuck can speak to this too, but I'll just give you the rundown on what we're selling. We sell a 2-pack of 400-watt panels, solar panels. They are so combined 800 watts, and those go for I think 1,000 for the 2-pack. They are rigid, so they're going to be like hail proof and weatherproof. We also sell flexible panels. I understand that our price point on panels is a little bit higher than competitors, but Chuck, knowing that you have panels on your roof, what do you say on pricing for that?
Um, well, the panels that I have on my roof are not the Anker brand panels.
I figured.
If you, yeah, but if you, I mean, the truth is, if you are going to get, commercial or residential panels, right now the going rate, and this is unfortunately you have to buy them usually in quantities of around 10 or so. If you're buying them online, it's really hard to buy just a couple at a time.
Yeah.
But if you're going to buy them in a quantity of 10 or so, you're looking at around $200 to $280 for a 400-watt panel. But you'll have to be careful if you're going to be using with this because you want to make sure that the output voltage, the open circuit voltage of that panel is not going to exceed 60 volts in your application. So which isn't impossible to do. It's pretty easy. I explained it earlier. You look at the sticker and it gives you the formula for every 1 degree, add or subtract this many volts from the open circuit voltage listed,
Kind
and
of
you'll
leads us
be good to go.
that leads us into a question that Benjamin has, which is a follow-up question, is do you need to connect, can you connect the solar panels on your roof directly to the F3800? Short answer, you cannot do that. Chuck, you take it from here because you have a model
Well,
you can
it
show us.
all it really all depends. If the solar panels on your roof are grid tied already using microinverters or any other type of inverter, and they're already wired up, the answer is no. Now, whatever solar panels you have on your roof absolutely could theoretically be connected to this. There's nothing inherent to rooftop solar panels that means they can't work with this. But if you want to make sure that it will work, that just means that between the solar panels and here, you want a direct connection. They cannot pass through any type of microinverter. And then you have to make sure that however they are wired, that the voltage coming out of your solar array does not exceed the 60-volt input limit on these, which will mean that if you've got residential style panels, I can almost guarantee you that if they're wired in series at all, even just 2 panels in series, you'll be exceeding that 60-volt limit. So in my case, if I were wanting to add or install or just have solar panels on my roof that connected directly to this, I would install them on my roof, and then I would go ahead and wire 2 panels at a time or even 3 panels, assuming they're 400-watt panels each, together in parallel. So that's connecting all the positives from each of the 3 panels and all the negatives from each of the 3 panels together, and then bring them into the input on this. And there's 2 inputs. Each input can accept up to 1,200 watts of solar coming in. And you can actually feed it way more wattage than that. There's not a limit on the watts you can feed it. The only limit, truly, is you can't go above 60 volts. You could hook 6,000 watts of panels up to just one of the inputs on this, and as long as it was below 60 volts, no damage would happen. What would happen is this would, early in the day, probably hit its input maximum of 1,200 watts, and then it would just stay there and be pegged there throughout the whole day. You'd be leaving a lot of power on the table, so to speak, but you wouldn't run a risk of damaging this whatsoever. And I can show you, when you're connecting 3 panels together in parallel, these are the type of connectors you'll use. You'd have this for all 3 negatives and this for all 3 positives, and that brings it down into one of each. And then that connects into the side of the XT60 port here using an adapter that goes from the solar panel MC standard to the XT60 connector that goes into the side here. So that's
I just want to
if you
point out
wanted
too
to
that those
connect those.
splitters that you are showing, they do
The
come.
only limit you have to worry about is 60 volts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You got to keep it at 60. However, if you have the home power panel, that's different, right?
If you're using the home power panel has the ability to monitor the input from grid tied solar panels that are already connected to your house. So if you
Right.
have grid tied solar panels installed on your home that are connected to your main breaker panel,
Right.
the current transformers will clip around the wires. You don't have to disconnect anything, they just clip around it and they monitor the flow of energy on those wires and feed that into the network inside the Anker Solix Home Power Panel.
So the key
So it's
idea,
able to in real time know how much power is coming from your solar panels and how much your home is using and how much it's pulling from the grid to optimize that combination of all those sources for the most efficient and most economical cost of operation.
so the key takeaway with that is if you have rooftop solar installed already and you decide to buy one or two F3800s and expansions or whatever, A, join the group and you'll see a lot more information and discussion about that. But you will need the home power panel. And Chuck, can you point to the home power panel so people know what that is on your wall?
This is the home power panel here. And in my case, because I have a smaller house, um, it basically sits between the grid that would feed my home's main breaker panel, which is right there, and my home's main breaker panel. So power comes in from the grid to here, and then this is where if the F3800 is running the show, it blends in the power and then sends the power back to the main breaker panel on my home where it goes out to all of my circuits and loads. So it's a very integral part of if you want to get the most and realize the monthly energy savings of having an F3800. That's not going to happen unless you have the home power panel. This is the interface that you
Yeah.
need in order to maximize on that. And the app is really nice. It's totally integrated, and at any point in time from anywhere in the world, I log into the app on my phone and I can see what's happening at my home as far as how much power is coming in from my solar, how much power am I using or giving back to the grid, and how much power am I either putting into the F3800 or taking out of at any given point in time.
Yeah,
There's
that's
no other
true.
PPS that can do that. This is truly the only one on the market that has that capability.
It is a pretty nice app. I agree. I'm trying to pull it up on my phone right now as my F3800 is connected. This isn't going to be the best view. I don't even know if I can make this work. I feel like I'm one of those like TikTok beauty influencers as I try to shove this in. I don't think y'all can even really see that very well. Nah, this
Yeah.
isn't going to come through very well. I'll
And
post
that
I'll
app
post
is
screenshots.
actually, I'll show you what I'm seeing.
I'll post some
That
screenshots of
app is
that in the
actually
group
pretty
so
different.
folks can see it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Chuck, you think you can show us?
So when you do the home power panel, yeah, because the view you get through the home power panel is actually pretty different.
No.
So let's see if there's a picture of my
What?
house
That's not going to
and
work for the same reason it
you'll,
didn't work for me. Oh, it's working better though. Never mind.
so there you go.
Huh.
So you can see the F3800 and there's power coming in from the solar panels on my roof. It looks like, oh, the solar is actually on standby right now because the sun's about to set. I forgot it's later than
Yeah.
that. But you can see the Solix. I don't know if you can read that, but the Solix is
Oh,
powering my home at 407 watts. It's got 76% of life left. I'm not using any power from the grid right now because we're in peak pricing, and my house is using 399 watts, and all of that's coming from the F3800.
will you send?
So
I don't have a
it's
home
really
power
cool.
panel. Will you send me screenshots of that app? I would love to share that in the group.
Sure.
And we have a question
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
Greg about the Teslas. So Greg is wondering
Okay.
if he has two F3800s and they're tethered together with the dual power hub, how much range can he get charging his Tesla? And I think it's important to point out that the F3800 has an EV charging mode. It's on the side of the device. You have to select that button. It's not exactly plug and play, but like it's pretty close. You have to push a button. So
Hmm.
on one F3800, you'd get, we estimate like 15 kilometers. So like 20 miles. Not very much. Some people think that's awesome. Some people think it's pretty lame. I mean, this isn't quite
Well,
what
it
that's
is what it is. It's just a math equation. If
true.
the
Yeah.
battery pack in your Tesla is a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, all right, and we know that this can hold 3.8 kilowatt hours of power, and the conversion from this going into your battery is absolutely not going to be 100%. Maybe at best, we'll say it's like 85% or 80% between the differences coming out of this and how efficient the charger in your Tesla is.
Yeah.
So if you have a 100 kilowatt hour battery, realistically, you're going to get probably something around 3% at most. Now, if your Tesla is using power for climate control, if it's using power for any other functions, that number is going to go down.
Yeah.
So to think of these as a standalone way to extend the range of your vehicle is a misunderstanding of the application and the intention behind it.
Not
What
quite what
is
it's designed for. It's like backup
It's
power.
not what it's designed for.
Yeah.
What would be cool if you need to charge your Tesla is you plug solar panels into this, you plug 2400 watts of solar into this, and then you plug your Tesla into it and you recharge it during the day. 2400 watts of solar input onto this, if you have them angled at the sun, during the summer months, you'll get around probably 12 to 15 kilowatt hours of power, which is far more than the 3.8 kilowatt hours that this can hold. So in that application, you might recoup 10 to 15% of your Tesla's range.
Yep.
That makes a lot more sense.
It
Carrying this
always
around
comes
in the
down
trunk of your
to
car
the
like a
math.
jerry can is
Right.
not the
Yeah, it's not a
best.
jerry can.
Yeah, I mean, electricity is very straightforward.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. And anybody who's going to ridicule this for being like, oh, you can't use that to charge an EV, it's like, yeah, you obviously can't.
Yeah, and you
That's
can't
like
use the
saying you
Tesla
can't
to
run
tow
an
your
EV off of a
camper.
tiny generator.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah,
So,
it's just math. There's nothing crazy about that.
and I think that's the thing that really kind of trips people up a little bit. Like when they first join the group, we get this question a lot. And it's similar to Shadi's question earlier, like, will it do this? Well, we really have to know what you're asking it to do. So this isn't designed
Sure. Yeah.
to replace your home charging system, your 120 volt plug in your garage for your Tesla, so you can charge it overnight for like $1.10. It's not designed to do that. But it is a nice little add-on feature because sometimes maybe you just need a little extra. I want to get into this question that Chuck and I actually dedicated a whole live to this topic, which is, and this comes from Michael Holland. Michael wonders the question on install. So the home power panel versus a manual transfer switch. Do you have to select what circuits are powered, or is it default to the entire house? Chuck will know the answer.
Yeah. So that is really just a function of what the amperage rating is of the load center that you're trying to run. So in my application, the the whole home breaker panel that I have, the one that my house had from the beginning, it's only 100 amps because my house is small. Okay. I don't have a big air conditioner. I don't have, it's a 2 bedroom, 1 bath house. I don't have a lot going on. And so that plays really nice with what the home power panel is designed to handle on its own internal transfer switch. It's designed to be installed. I believe it's capable of 80 amps of continuous power flow. And so that matches up really nicely with my 100 amp panel, because typically you oversize the breaker by a certain margin, usually around 20% or so. So really, the 80 amps with the 100 amp breaker on my main panel, that's a perfect fit. So in my case, I don't have to pick any circuits at all. My whole panel will be powered. If you had a bigger home, you would probably need to install a sub panel that would be powered by the home power panel in order to take some of those larger loads off of it. Now, it's also the case that, there are some things that just don't need to be on for your backup loads. Most people, if the power's out, they're going to be pretty happy if they can keep the lights and the HVAC working, and maybe they don't need to have all of these other bells and whistles going on at the same time.
That's a
Now,
really good point. And Alyssa, I mean,
yeah,
I know you know Regretless. Alyssa, she and I did a live I don't know, a few weeks ago now, maybe a month ago, where we talked about how, you would determine what you'd need to power. Because with any backup system, I mean, the grid feels unlimited, limitless to us, and to a degree, like it is, until it goes down and it's like all or nothing. And if you're using this for an emergency backup, scenario, you probably want to think through, what do I need to power? Deep freeze, fridge and freezer. Am I going to need a microwave, TV, laptop, tablet? What am I going to need? You want to make that list and understand what the usage, the watts that each one of those items is going to draw, while it's charging or while you're using it, and build your system accordingly. And the group, again, the group is great for these kinds of questions. And the question you'll always get if you say, hey, will this power my X, will be, well, what is your X? Like, what all does that entail? Like Chuck said earlier, it's just a simple math equation. But it seems complicated. I think people get a little tripped up by, I know I have, especially when I started working with Anker more than a year ago now, like, the vocabulary. So let me know in the comments if you're new to Anker, you're new to Solix, you're new to this whole business of backup power. Let me know in the comments if a vocabulary sort of sheet would be helpful. I've been looking for a project for this group to work on sort of communally and collectively. So that might be a place to start. If people want it, I'm going to figure out a way to do that. I am going to take another, like, one last question. Let's see. I like Greg's comment here. Greg says 20 miles, related to the Tesla question. 20 miles is great for an emergency. And it's true, right? Like 20 miles, that's not nothing. I love saying that. That's not
No.
nothing. Travel Diva, she asks if you'll be getting the extra batteries for the F3800. I don't know if that's directed at me or at Chuck. I think we have the same answer, though. Chuck, you.
Well, so because I have two of these and my house is pretty small, I'm probably not going to be getting an expansion batteries
Yeah, you
because
wouldn't need it.
I don't need it. I mean, to give you perspective, you can look at the electrical bill that you get from your utility company every month, and they will tell you how many kilowatt hours you use that month. And if you divide that by 30, that's going to be your average daily kilowatt hour usage. And so my home, if I'm not running the air conditioning, I'm only using around 200 kilowatt hours a month of electricity, which is not very much. So that, so we divide that by 30, that's going to be around 60, or what is that? That's around six-ish kilowatt hours a day, between 6 and 7 kilowatt hours a day. So between these two devices, 3.8 and 3.8, that puts me at 7.3 kilowatt hours, or 7.6 kilowatt hours of battery backup, and then daily on peak storage that I can use when the electricity is expensive. And that's more than I use in a day anyway. So I'll be set with just these two units. But
Chuck,
if you had a situation where you used more, then I would consider looking into expansion batteries. The cool thing is you can add them at any point in time. So if you
yeah,
get one, just a base unit, and you're like, whoa, I'm doing great, I love this, then you're good to go. And if you change
right.
your mind, go buy another expansion battery and plug it in. It's no big
And we
deal.
say this system will charge to 100% for the next 10 years of like daily use. So it's like 3,000 charging cycles, a charging cycle being taking it down to zero, which is really 1%, and taking it back up to 100. That's one charge cycle. So you get 3,000 of those, we estimate. And then, that's, many years of cycling. Then you can add expansions. So it might make sense to you to add an expansion. Once you get this system, you go, hey, I like this. This works for me. So add an expansion, because you can add and delete as needed to expand your system. And by the way, at 10 years, say 10 years, you're not just going to not be able to use it. You'll just reduce the charging capacity to like 80%. So it'll still be a very useful tool for you. I really appreciate all the questions. And I want to offer people in the group, I have a couple of these koozies. Can you all see the koozie? Yeah. I want to send a couple of these to folks. So, two really great questions that I can answer in the group. Actually, that's not good. I know, that's it. That's what we need to do. Who wants a branded koozie? Say please, because we have to have manners. And then let me know if this live was useful in the comments, and tell me why it was useful. And if you want to offer some kind correction, then tell me how it could be better. So, free koozie. I got two. Chuck, I want to thank you for your time and your
Yeah, no problem.
really appreciate it, and
Happy to be here.
appreciate that you're going overtime with us, and appreciate that you
No
rearranged
worries. It's all
your
good.
schedule.
It's
Hey,
all good.
our mutual friend Austin is in the chat. Hey, Austin.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah. So, thank you, Chuck.
Yeah. All
Namaste.
right. All right. I'm a go.
I'll see you later.
We'll see you next time. All right.
Join the group, people. Join the group. It's a good group. Bye, Chuck. Everyone say bye, Chuck.
Bye. All
Cheers,
right.
Chuck. See you
See ya.
later. Bye. Thanks, everyone. Join the group. We ask and answer questions there all the time. Smell you later.